Well, let's start at the beginning and begin at the end, and start at the beginning and begin at the end, and time becomes a loop. Well, I think, well, like I say, the reason I say that is because at the end of this, when we have this finish this conversation off, I want to, as I was saying before we went live, I want to finish with art room experiments. So I think the very beginning of this conversation, I'm going to read out the anyone can go and see on Bandcamp, and it says live improv guitar recorded onto 4-track, then sampled into Reason and arranged with no input RAM, crashing rewiring noise. Exported to sound recorder and rearranged. Exported to a 4-track in order to resample speed shifted backdrop. 2 live improv guitar tracks recorded on top. Bounce back sound recorder and back to 4-track in stereo. Then 1 live studio bass recorded, bounce to another recorder, bounce back to Reason for stereo mastering. The final audio is mastering on a VHS and cassette tape. This studio is our tape of patchworking. Sometimes it drives me a bit nuts. CPU from 94, 4-track from the 80s, broken monitor, broken speakers, crappy instrument cables, no chair. The photo lets you glean into my reality a bit. This song took a lot of tinkering, so I hope you enjoy it. And with that, my friend, over to you. Please give me more insights.
Oh man. Well, yeah, I run a weird weird rig, that's for sure. Really into pumping in and out through the computer came originally from a friend of mine that I used to play music with, and he left me the computer because I was using it all the time to make music. And it was, yeah, it was from the 90s at one point, and then it was kind of always an art computer, and he had upgraded anyways, so we hacked that into, that's my main studio rig, and I'm running like an early version of Reason on there, which allows me to do a lot of the like weird. It's got a lot of abilities to do a lot of interesting EQ things and mastering things, as well as doing like synth type stuff. And then, yeah, the 4-track came from a friend of mine when I was living out of a flop house in Edmonton with him, and he wasn't using it anymore, and this dusty thing came my way, and I've been really into using going back to cassette because I mean, that's kind of the sound of when I started listening to music, anyways. Was a lot of cassettes. Cassette was my first album. So now going back into that and working it back off of itself and kind of playing with 2 technologies at once and trying to keep it as analog as I can. But in reality, I mean, a lot of my pedals are digital anyway, so I'm trying to throw the analog feed back into the digital world and then ultimately back onto cassette. So yeah, and that just tons of experimentation because you can mess with time a lot differently, and some of the textures I find you can only grab that way. So it's an interesting setup.
Well, you mentioned sort of working on a cassette, and again, let's take this from a very kind of I mean, man, I know what it's like to be back in the day with that. So, were you just working on a C15, a C60, a C30, a C90, or did you actually cut it to the specific time you required on the actual cassette?
Well, I just I'm running on. Quite honestly, I'm dubbing over some crappy cassettes that I found at a thrift store here. So, yeah, I'm kind of dealing with that lo-fi region right now.
Man, that begs the question, man. So you can still buy cassettes from where you are, man? Because I don't think I've seen a cassette on sale in any kind of shop for years and years and years, man. So it kind of surprises me that you can still kind of buy even cassettes at a thrift shop or anything.
I think it's fucking Dolly Parton's greatest hits. Yeah, yeah, that's something like that. So yeah, I take pride in taking over that that medium.
So just I mean, again, so working with obviously tape and cassettes. What did you find the well, put it this way, what were the lessons you've learned from that experience?
There's a kind of there's a glory in reclaiming it. There's a glory in like taking back and salvaging a technology that I always loved, and then people have walked away from. The thing with the VHS, like kicking it to mastering on the VHS, is like VHS should have been the way of the future, and then for whatever reason people abandoned the tech. And you can find VCRs here, there, and everywhere, and I still have a bunch of busted ones. Like I have a massive, I'll even walk you up to it. I have a massive tape collection, because when I was working the railroad and working nights, I always needed like a white noise to get me out of having to hear all the construction in the morning around me and stuff. So to be able to even sleep, I mean, this is like probably what, one tiny bit of my collection. I'm like, well, there's a tiny bit. There's all this stuff. And I've got a whole crawl space full of VHS, right? Like, so yeah, and if we keep kind of going through the studio a bit, I mean, like, some of the parts of my rig are super old, man. Yeah, you can see this, maybe.
Oh, like, man, yeah.
You're kind of ripping through all this old equipment. Like, the computer itself's all, like, falling apart. But yeah, you make it work, right? Like, but yeah, the studio is a hilarious thing, and I always kind of patch it together with just like spur of the moment. So I'm really into like wiring stuff, really weird, really into wiring, and getting into like no input feedback noise, or like things like that interest me quite a bit, because you can pull frequencies out of nothing. Like I just did a tape with a friend of mine where the quote unquote instrument that he's playing is simply a feedback loop through all his pedals, and he knows how to manipulate the pedals well enough in order to make that an instrument. And so I've been mad interested in that for a while. So yeah, I don't know. If it helps with my creative process, then I use it. And if it's too much weirdness with cables, then I don't.
Well, on that very kind of that very point, my friend. I mean, I know a few people just creatively who are doing music, and it's fascinating you're talking about this, because I'll give you an example of someone I know. He's recording old school, like I say, he's doing old tracks. He's got an old 8, an old 4 track, an old 16 track, and he's got this little room, a bit like you yourself, my friend. He's got them all wired up, but he's very much in the analog world. So the best I ever get thrown from him is a CD, because he's like, dude, I don't know how to put this onto, actually onto digital. So the question I was sort of throw back to you, my man, who's obviously someone who's working in a field that obviously he understands. He's working in old school equipment. What tips and advice would you give to him to say, look, to make that bridge across? Because every time I talk to him, or people like this, they always go, oh yeah, but it means learning so much, and I've got to do this. And you know what people are like that, man, these kind of people generally, they don't like to sort of stray into social media. They don't have any Facebook, so they're very much anti kind of digital generally. But from someone who has jumped that gap and has made that jump, I mean, what advice would you give to someone like that?
The benefit of going to a digital, even if it is just for backing up, is you have so much more space. I mean, like, so like the VCR, like why I'm wanting to get way more into using the VCR is because now I can back up in a hard copy that's hard to destroy, that has 8 hours of physical ability, and it's hi-fi. So that's what I meant to say to finish the thought about. I don't understand why people abandon VCRs, because right now reel-to-reel tape, people pay all this money to record reel-to-reel, and you can't find tape for that anymore. Like 2-inch tape, very difficult or very expensive. I mean, either way is things that I don't want to deal with, and all I have to do is put a little bit of piece of tape on an old VCR, and then I've got 8 hours of hi-fi recording ability on master. Sweet. And so going oppositely, going analog to digital, just requires a few simple cables, you know, like you just got to get it so that the signal will go into your computer. And then on your computer, I mean, I'm still using just like old Windows sound recorder. So that just comes with the computer. So it isn't really a matter of learning anything. You just got to know how to cable it in, set your gain stages correctly so you're not clipping. And then, you know, Robert's your mother's brother, right? You say Bob's your uncle? Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, like that's one way. Or if you want to get more into it, there's plenty of free VSTs out there that a lot of people use, a lot of people have good success with that can get you a certain different quality. And matter of factly, I mean, like it's an easier way to share your stuff with people is to digitize it. I mean, like the fact that you can even hear it over there, over the ocean, it kind of, there you go. You know, like it's not like I have a distribution network of things that, you know, quite honestly, no one would probably go out of their way to purchase nowadays because they don't have a way to play it. So they don't have a cassette or whatever, but everyone has the ability nowadays that everyone's got their headphones on. They're only going tune by tune, you know, or what's the point other like to make a complete album other than to create it? You know what I mean? Like, but like nowadays, the way people are listening to things are just like track by track. And so if that's one way that people can get their stuff out there, then I say power to them. And I also say it isn't a hard feat to learn because a lot of these VSTs, I mean, they make the graphics look exactly like a tape player. Or like, you know, so like can be very user friendly with that interface. So that's the advice I would give is it's not that hard. And if you want to do it, you can do it. And the benefits of doing it is you get to share your stuff. So.
Well, I think what you're speaking upon then, and that is something that I've been contemplating for a few months now, thinking in this rush we've got in this world to put everything, like you say, everything's just been put digitally online for everybody to enjoy online. And I don't know, I think where we're at in the creative people, you always say, I think there's this beauty and there's an element of humanity that's actually making stuff physically, like you're doing, my friend. You're going back to analog and plugging machines into machines and capturing it on cassettes and tapes and stuff. And there is a much more of a, I don't know, an art form in doing that. And I think just listening to even the form. This is one of the things I was going to throw to you, because I think, like I say, actually having something physically in your hand and listen to it in that form rather than digitally. I mean, I know, for instance, I know a band who recently just put some cassettes out, and it was amazing listening to it on cassette. It was like, oh wow, this is just a completely different listening experience that I think a lot of people, particularly if they're millennials, they haven't got a clue. It's almost like the way they listen to music has been lost.
Yeah, I agree. There is something that's lost, and like I don't know. Like I was looking into the science of like a lot of like production techniques, and looking at the science of it, you know, like vinyl aficionados and people going back and like reclaiming those kind of lost formats, if you will. And like nowadays, vinyl's getting its due again, you know. And because of what exactly? And a lot of people are like, well, it's every other format you're losing something. Well, science-wise, no, it's opposite. You know, like vinyl's kind of the worst way to record in one way, where you're looking at the science of which frequencies are lost. And then cassette had slightly less frequencies lost, and it had its own texture, you know. And then like hi-fi cassette, like through VHS or VCR, there was another version of a slight loss, and then you're going digital, and now you're not losing as much content, but what you are not able to do digitally is record all the true harmonics that are present behind every note. And so like all the resonant frequencies when I'm playing a guitar, not the note I'm hitting necessarily, but how that note is affecting every other string. that gets lost in the digital. And so that's why it's kind of like it's difficult to like play a synth and be like, well, it's not quite a piano. It's goddamn close, and it's more functional, you know, in so many ways. Because I mean, try and move a piano, right? But you can't get it exactly unless you add some version of white noise content, or and so like tape hiss, you know, tape hiss will help bring out those harmonics better through things. And so like, you know, why do people use distortion sometimes on guitar or bass or whatever? And what I found is, well, if I'm digitally like using a cello or whatever, and digitally I'm adding distortion, then all of a sudden I'm going like, well, that sounds a little better. That sounds a little clearer. Why was that happening? And I looked at the science of it. It's like, well, it's because it's all the stuff in the background that you don't necessarily perceive right away that's helping with all that harmonic content, and then your version of like that is a true live performance. Because that's what I was not finding if I was just going straight to digital. Was, yes, it was very good quality, but it's like it's not picking up everything. Like it's automatically, there's a loss in there that's sort of, it's translating it into numbers, and not all those numbers translate very well. Yeah, that's the only way to put it.
No. I know exactly what you're talking about, and it's the difference between, I don't know, maybe it's a simple kind of binary decision between the people who play instruments compared to the people who play electronic music. And I'm not either, not no dog in the fight either side of this at all. But as you know, when you play any instrument, it's the same reason why any musician who plays any instrument, a guitar, a piano, a cello, a flute, a trumpet, anything, every single handmade instrument or any actual physical will have its own unique, for want of a better word, soul. It'll have its own vibration, its own tonic energy that it has. And hence the reason that some people will pay ridiculous amounts of money just to have an old guitar that's from the 50s that's been beaten up and stuff, because it has all the elements of being, you know, played, and that sounds, you know, even the fact the fret. For instance, my brother's got a he's had a Fender, you know, for maybe 9 years now, and he says he's just warming it in. He's just got the, you know, the frets are down to the wood, and it's just smearing in. It's just starting to age. So I think this is one of the, like you say, it's the elements that's lost between digital music and the analog, for want of a better word. Not only does the individual pieces of instrument have their own, for want of a better word, their own sound, their own vibrations, but equally as well, and this is the other thing that's lost in this digital world, is that it's almost this search for perfection. Everything has to be completely, you know, perfect. It reminds me of the old when Boston made their album, and they spent 6 years making the album, and apparently the old myth goes that they spent about a year arguing about one single note of a cowbell, and it was kind of like that's almost digital to me. That where you can seek perfection. Now there's something wrong with that, but what I like particularly, I think, like, has been lost in this wave to seek perfection with all this, you know, everything got to sound perfect, has been the old element of like, what did I like? For me personally, what do I like about the blues? I like hearing the, like say, the space in the noise in the background, and the offbeat note, and the fact the guitar wasn't perfectly tuned, and the fact you can hear it's all the little, I don't know, the bits around the edges. It's the same reason, for art reason, why do people still like hand produced artwork rather than prints? Because they like to see the little mistakes and the little elements of humanity in it. Sorry, that's what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that's exactly it. If something is I find it easier with things that aren't so polished, in order to, like, they invoke more emotion in me. And so, yeah, like you say, like the tiny little flaws here and there sometimes make the piece, right? Like, I'd rather, musically, like, I'd rather a raw note if the rest of the piece, I mean, like the rest of the piece begged it. So like if a musician went after it for 13, 15 minutes, and what, are you going to flub the take because of one note? Sometimes. I mean, like, so it depends how off you were. And other times it's like, well, is good enough good enough? Because everything else that was captured in that moment, you know, I felt right when I played it, or that was basically what was in my head, you know, or some of those happy accidents. And if you're not willing to ride the edge, those happy accidents can't happen. And sometimes listening back to it, you surprise yourself, you know. And so yeah, if you're not riding the edge of that rough landscape, then it comes across to me, anyways, a little too polished, a little too, how to word it, thought out, too planned out. You know what I mean? I like prefer to see people's doodles sometimes to their masterpieces. So maybe it's similar, you know, with sound.
No, I think it's fascinating that you bring up that, my friend, because it's to this day. I mean, people can, historians, etc., they can go back and read manuscripts, and I suppose they're all there, you know, everybody knows kind of word for word what those like in some of these old Bibles, but what they fascinate, what they spend hours and hours studying over is the little bits that the individual scribe wrote in the edges. It's the same with the cathedrals over here. I mean, people will spend hours trying to find a little scribble left by, you know, a carpenter he's left his individual mark. It's exactly that, my friend. Those are the things that ring through the centuries, and I think personally, I think it's, when you actually look at it on a deep level, anything we're creating, whether it's music or art, we're trying to ultimately express that humanity. And I think, like you said, the humanity isn't perfect. That's what separates us from the AI and the machine, man. We have those imperfections.
Yeah. Well, what I keep hearing too, with like the random tidbits of AI making up language with itself, I mean, there's imperfections there. And that's not polished yet. So we have hope, you know. Skynet hasn't completely taken control. Or if they do, it's a lot of omnigorples before the FNAFs, you know. Like, so but yeah, if everyone had the same flavor and the same polished tone musically, or if everyone used the same color palette and they didn't know how to mix their own paint, then you know, where's the nuance, and where's the little, the je ne sais quoi? It's lost. It's lost. You know, just like that kind of conversation in terms of like the era of loud, you know, like in terms of music production in the 90s, and everyone started over compressing everything, and everyone wanted their masters to be real loud. And it's like you lose so much out of that, and then everything sounds the same. And it's I don't know. I personally think a lot was lost with popular culture appreciating that more than the subtleties. Like the subtleties of music just kind of went out the window for a little while, until like you know, you hear other indie bands that weren't overly produced that way, and didn't have a compressor, for instance, and you can actually hear the landscape of the song, the peaks and valleys, rather than everything just being a boom, a huge block sound wave. If you look at the sound waves from that era of post production, it's all just a block. There's no up and down, you know. And I don't agree with it. I like hearing that distance, you know. And without that, you know, like if everyone yelled all the time, then the effect of a whisper, you know, would we even be able to hear it, or would the effect of the whisper be louder than the loud?
Yeah,
I think it would be louder, or at least those words would have more weight.
yeah. I mean, I think it's and I'm always surprised. Well, people are always surprised when I say to them that the amount of, you know, bands, and particularly they maybe like on a, you know, particularly a large scale, that they won't even record live anymore. You know, literally the guitarist will, you know, literally send his little bit in, and the drummer will send his little bit in, and then some guy will sit and master it all, and they don't ever get to play it live at all. And I think, like they say, these are the elements that are lost. And okay, great, it sounds great and it sounds perfect, but it's not the element of, again, it's not what we get into this for, dude. You don't get into music to sit there and, you know, do perfection, do you? You do it for, like, you like what you're doing tonight, my man, you know, playing around with different sounds, because it's one of the other things that people forget, and this is something you can really speak upon, because even just the way you, like you're saying, the way you place mics, the way you have your room set up, the way that, you know, certain, I mean, I'm sure your recording studio has changed just because you think, oh wait, that it actually came out a bit better because if I put that piece of furniture there, or that happened to be there, and because it's sound is a very peculiar thing that people just think it's just a bunch of graphics on the digital screen, and it's not. It is like a palette. It's like a color. You're being an artist, and you're playing with how you can, you know, play with that sound, and how the different effects of the mics from the, you know, how far they are away from the speakers, or how you, and that's what you're playing the sound, rather than just seeing it as a, like I say, just a you know, a bunch of zeros and ones on a screen that you can almost perfect to an inch of its life. It's not a good way to play with music.
Well, it's like it's distanced, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anyone sits like when they're making a composition. It's very rare that someone's sitting in a music studio. I mean, like, and so right there, like something's completely different. You know, like most compositions happen on an acoustic instrument at first, or it's someone just singing to themselves. You know, and so that distance from that purity of that moment, um, it it's its own art. Like the music studio itself is its own art. And what I would add to what you're discussing in terms of like where everything's placed, like I don't know, check out this chaos. To me, like sounds like a chaos. Okay, so like here's the chaos right now. It's like
Yes.
rocking this 5.1 system, right? Like a busted guitar, you know, so like chaos. And so, but in there, there's something, right? Like, so if I stand a certain spot in there while I'm playing, it's rather interesting because that's what I'm trying to dial in now. Is everything I'm changing everything into 5.1, so it's its own little learning curve of like how do you want the textures to be presented and so on, you know? Because I'm interested in that 3D sound. Like, you know, I quit drugs a long time ago, so like I would like to be able to just like music's the drug, you know, for me. And so if I'm listening to it, I might as well be catching some of those cellular memories and being like, oh yeah, that's totally dreamy or whatever. And if someone else can get that out of it, that's cool. Um, and if they are all blasted, then they got a sweet soundtrack. So it
Yeah.
doesn't matter either way.
Well, I mean, again, just on the process one. I mean, you've just shown us, you know, the surroundings you're in. Now, do you have your setup? And maybe I'll give reflections here. I'll have a room, and I have, you know, particularly, so at any point, if I want to go in, and okay, I haven't got to set up the whole room, I can just go and paint. Now, what are the steps? So for instance, if you fell asleep and you woke up, how many steps have you got to go through between, you know, actually waking up and actually and recording? Or is it quite, do you have it that sort of like almost switch and go, or it's kind of like, do you unplug everything? I mean, I'm fascinated of that very process, because you've gone to the lengths of having it in your house. So how simple do you have it? I mean, it's almost like a machine that's almost ticking over all the time with all your settings perfectly set.
Right now, like right now, if I passed out on the couch, I could wake up and immediately do something. Granted that it wasn't too late, but the well, that's just because I had this pre-planned for our little thing. Like if I wanted to do a tune, then I'm all set. But normally, I prefer to have everything in a condition where you can, yeah, wake up from a dream and be able to do it. Normally, in that sense, it's often too late to, like, nowadays in my reality. But like, I'll get up and like I'll just do it without any power. Yeah, just
Right.
so that my fingers and just trust my fingers to memorize that, and then I'll meditate on it, and then I'll come back to it when I have the time to do all the cabling. Because yeah, I mean, you work 12, 14 hours a day. It's not always time conducive to be able to be, you know, as poor as I am. Like I need to eat. and music isn't the thing that's feeding me. Yeah, you know, like it's not feeding my belly, but it feeds my my it makes me happier to create. So so it feeds me in another way. But yeah, in the past, it used to be exactly that. Like I used to tune my guitar right before I went to sleep, so that if I had a dream and I woke up to a song, then I can immediately grab my guitar and play it. Because that's how my kind of dream mind works. Is I often like see my hands doing it, or I'm hearing it while seeing a landscape and seeing a story, and then I'll only ever be able to pull out a certain amount while I'm going back into waking state. And it's hard to stay in the dream consciousness while actually physically playing it, right?
Yeah.
So I can only ever grab so much of it, and then I just trust that subconsciously that's already in me. So like maybe I'll find something, or maybe that's just the gateway to being able to find something interesting within it, and allow the happy accidents to happen, right? But yeah, currently, I mean, like my life's chaos, so the music studio reflects that. Because yeah, my whole house had flood damage, and I've renovated my whole place, and just trying to patch reality back together here. But it's coming along good. It's coming along good.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think I'm just on both those two elements there, my friend. I think it's, you know, maybe I'll bounce a question back to you. I mean, I don't know. It always kind of there's always a part of my soul that breaks when I hear that people like when you say what you said there, man. Because I know what it's like, dude. I know that reality. Like, and you think, well, why have we got people like yourself and all the creative people struggling to do crappy jobs just to pay their rent? I mean, what kind of world have we built around us, man? Or not we built? Well, what kind of random world has been put around us where that's not the case? Because man, we should we should generally be aiming for the better things and the, like you said, the defining the better parts of our nature. This is what us as musicians and creative people do, man. So I don't know. I just think that that's why I wanted to talk to you tonight, my man, because it's we touched upon it in this conversation. I mean, here we are with all these tools in our hands, and like you said, and you're a perfect example of someone who's going back and using old tools, but what you know, I was to say to you, if you could, if I could put you in charge of all this paradigm for a moment, what would you? I mean, what do you think is going to be the fundamental step that's going to make, you know, shifting this paradigm to where it's kind of like, okay, we've all got the tools, we can all play it, we can all disseminate this stuff. How do we get this to where? Or do you think it's ever going to change? Or is it just going to be the curse of musicians for as long as we ever have a lifetime, just to be the bottom of the run, bottom of the train? No one ever cares, and they just want us packing in factories and stuff. I mean, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Don't lose the purity, because I don't think anyone went after music to be rich.
Nope,
And
I agree.
and so like in another essence, it's like if I can get this light on, like the idea of like learn how to build your dream. Like I don't know if I can catch this on the camera reasonably. Probably not. It's just gonna look like a pile of chaos. But like, so you got tools and shit, right?
Yep.
And if you know how to work them, and like music gear can be tools to me, you know, like in all the like states of reality that I've been in, and where I've been dirt poor and eating the dumpsters, I never got rid of my music gear,
Yeah.
like and so like because to me it was tools, and I never got rid of my tools because those tools I can build with. It's not worth it to me to hawk like a saw. It doesn't make sense, because like I can go get a job with that saw. So if it's about getting a job with the thing,
Yep.
um, then find a way to do that, you know. Or is the tool more like I said, for music, for me, is it a tool for healing me? It doesn't have to
Yeah.
be for anyone else. It'd be cool if it was, you know, like it'd be nice if other people liked it. That'd be cool, because it is an externalized thing. if being a musician was about sitting in silence and your performance was silence, and I'm not doing anything to affect the eardrums, then that would be called something else. You know, like that live performance would be different, right? Like, or if my canvas was a blank canvas at an art gallery rather than something filled up. Like, is it the negative space or is it the other? Or is it maybe both? You know, maybe a bit of both. And so, like, you know, it's hard to be grinding through the gears of being a gigging musician if you let like the ego get in the way of that. You know, like this festival that I just played. That's the only way I could word it. It was a test of the ego, and I think I passed. Why, like, no one else knows, so I'll just give it a little background. Is like I kept getting bumped in time. Did you mind going after this person? This person really wants to go. It's like, yeah, fine. It's 25 bands that we tried to throw on in one day, you know? So a lot of people have to be able to work with each other, right? Like all these people that we didn't know. And so on my essence of the wavelength I was running on was just like, yeah, like if you're adamant about playing right now, then you go play. I could care less. You know, like if this is your moment and you feel like you're gonna shine right now, and right now is the time you gotta go, I could care less about having to wait for 45 minutes till I have to do it. Because and so I did that. And I kept doing that, and then you know, 5 in the morning hit, and they cut the power on us. And so my performance at the festival was comedy in the morning while we were drinking coffee. And then I juggled, and I did some interpretive dance. And for the 5 people that were hungover, like having laughs with me, they got their performance, and that was my performance. So even though I brought all my gear, I didn't use it. I just used another way of being a performer, I suppose. And we had a laugh about that because everyone else seemed to really want to present their stuff, you know, which was cool. Everyone did a really good job. And I'm glad they all did it. I was really into like taking naps on the couch and being 20 feet away from this super loud band, and I'm being like, awesome. So it worked out for everyone, I think. You know? But yeah, if people let ego get in the way, then you get into all those weirdnesses about that. Because my take on that is like, you know, some of the best musicians I know are some of the most humble people I've ever met. You know, and that goes to a fault sometimes, you know? And so I can understand why, if you are a performer, there is a bit of ego that goes with that, because you have to shine it on. You have to shine it on to someone. You know, it's not easy writing a poem. Even harder is presenting the poem. Even the harder is presenting the poem very well to someone, you know? And so like, you have to summon something to do that. And that night I summoned my stuff differently. and everyone else summoned their thing differently. But like what I prefer the most out of musicianship is the improvisation anyways. So, you know, if someone really wanted to tell their story that was very, very dialed, that's okay. Because honestly, I wanted to hear a very dialed story that was presented very well. And so, because it does make for a better show. And so I was, I was set to do the sunrise performance, but instead I did comedy during the sunrise, which was appropriate, I think. I don't know.
Yeah, but you're absolutely right, because I think 2 elements you're absolutely you kind of spoken upon there. One is the stripping of the ego, which is that's something that I think that's something with creative people, we always walk that line. We're walking the line between, and this is what I'm saying, it's that duality, which I think you eruditely spoke upon, because the heart of what we do, we are doing this from an individual basis. You know what I mean? I mean, when you're doing your pieces of music, it's you that's creating it. It's not, you're not being, you know, brainwashed by some other, you know, person who's, you know, and you're just a dummy for their output. No, it's you. So there's that, like I say, it's that duality we have with the ego. But I mean, again, my friend, and I think you actually, you really do speak upon it, and it's something that, again, I think people who have really who from the creative point of view understand that. I think there's 2 elements. One is the struggle, Dude, every person that I've ever met who's a truly creative person has been through the struggle. They've had to scrape knees. They know what it's like to have the bum rap of life, man. And I think that's part of the forming of your character. And I think the second element of it is, and again, it's the moment you just described then are almost the perfect moments of life, my friend, because they're the moments, I guarantee you, the 5 people who watched that will be a life memory for them. Whereas maybe the 400, 5,000 people who watched the bands through the middle of the night, it's just another night. If you went to them in 2 months' time, they'd be like, oh, yeah, they won't have any memories of it. But you're the 5 people there, you've affected their deep consciousness. And that's the beauty of what we do, man. It's not about numbers. It's about how many people you can have that experience with, man. And if you have it just with one other person, you're doing well. If you get it with 5 people, because I can guarantee, if I went and spoke to those 5 people in 10 years' time, 20 years' time, if you're one of them ones, man, their kids will be telling like, oh, my granddad was at this festival once when this bearded man played this interpretive dance. It'll be a life memory, my friend, to their grandkids.
Yeah, you don't see it every day. Exactly. Now, one might argue that there's a reason why you don't see it every day. But, you know, that's all right. Some people just like to argue, you know?
Exactly, man. So obviously you mentioned that South Festival. Have you got any other gigs or any other sort of things planned up to sort of coming up with it?
I've been surfing this like there's an app that well like it's called Kijiji. I don't know if that's hit over the ocean or whatever. But here, anyways, if people have like free shit that they need to get rid of, they throw it on Kijiji. And I've been surfing Kijiji for all sorts of free stuff or like really cheap stuff. And so like this whole rig's built out of super cheap stuff that people got rid of. So like and like that Strat I grabbed recently for like $80. And then I just like did some luthier work on it and now it's killer, man. And so like I've been surfing the salvage train. I call it Driftwood Technologies. Like that's
Nice.
my fake business name for that. Driftwood Technologies, and then we just go around like land pirates, and then we hustle people out of their things that they think are broken. But really, if you know how to fix stuff, there's a lot of like cool things out there. And if you have like a mindset of wanting to make something happen with it, yeah, I mean like it's kind of nuts. So I don't know what I was driving at there, but
No, I was saying about your
yeah.
next project. Because I think
So yeah, out of one of these like land pirate missions, I ended up at a guy's place who I swear to God, when we got there, he was a nice guy, smiley dude and everything. But I really think I stumbled into like someone who makes porn's house. Because like I went there and I grabbed 1,500 DVD cases for free. And because I was like, yeah, it's packaging for an album, right? Like that's a bunch of money that I don't have to spend, and I'll grab that thing and repurpose that. No one has to know it comes from this shady individual who like had really smiley thing, but I just kept wondering, well, like whether like this guy was just going to be like, and this is my 22-year-old wife, and you guys want to make a little movie on the side here, like, because why do you have 1,500 DVD cases? You gotta ask, you know what I mean? But I didn't want to ask. I just kind of wanted it, and I wanted to leave as fast as I could. It was awkward, you know what I mean? Like I had my shorts on and my no shirt after work, and sweaty, and then there's that guy, and it was awkward. Anyways, I got the DVD cases though. And so like that's going to be coming out soon. So yeah, I'm trying to just get everything in order for getting this 5.1 sound correctly, because I'd like it to be a bunch of the art and the animations to be able to, so I can throw like it as a DVD, and then you can listen to it through your home stereo surround system, and then kind of do the like the experience that way, where similar to like how Pink Floyd was going quadraphonic and Grateful Dead, you know. So yeah, I've been kind of trying to dial things that way, and I think it's working out pretty good. So we'll see. That's like definitely one thing on the horizon. And then out of that, so we'll do a live version of that with like a bunch of circus people and musicians, and do some weird take on that, and then throw that out as a video perhaps.
Well, you've mentioned, and I think it's only relevant we kind of do this because I know I'm going to get questions afterwards. So you've mentioned a few times in this conversation 5.1 sound. Well, kind of give us some more insights about what that is and what you're trying to, like you said, you keep saying that you're trying to sort of strive to get this 5.1 sound. What particularly is it that you're trying to strive towards? What gives us an insight into what 5.1 sound is.
Well, for instance, what I'm trying to hack together is I want to change the pickups on my bass to quadraphonic pickups. So that means that like each string has its own pickup, and then you have 4 outs, and then those outs can go through whatever effect you want for that particular string. Like dial your reverb just so for that kind of that particular string, and then you can throw that through. So if those 4 channels are now 4 channels on, say, like a DAW, for those in the know, like a digital audio workstation, like on your computer, then you can isolate those tracks to be only exported through front right channel, let's say, is just that string. That's the D string that goes there. And the G string can be rear right and A string and so on. You catch my drift. And then so for a drum kit, let's say the kit might be just the sub, and I don't want those frequencies at all represented through any other speakers. So I can now isolate what I'm driving out of that speaker cone so that nothing is going to be mudded up with asking that speaker to do anything other than that particular job, right? So if I can get, say, the treblemost string on my guitar playing maybe on the lowest note of the bass, and that's all I'm asking that speaker to do, then the clarity should be very nice and crisp, as opposed to asking a speaker to do so many different functions, right? So there's hexaphonic pickups for the guitar, like hex is 6. So you can drive 6 channels out of that. So 5.1, 0.1 is the sub. So that means that I can go 0.1 for my lowest string on the guitar, and then the other 5 speakers can be the rest of the strings. That would be one way you could wire that. And then when you think orchestrally, you have many, many options at your disposal, right? Mm-hmm. And so with reverb, if reverb is depth of palette, right, and like to a slight degree color or mist or whatever, and then if clarity is more like, it's almost like to me, I kind of think of it as glass, like you just like it's very clear glass that you're looking through, and now you can haze the glass or whatever you want. And also, I've always just been interested in how you're doing like creative panning techniques in order to bring, that instrument is just slightly over there, just like you were in a room with a band. That guy's speaker's right over there. That guy's speaker's right over there, and so on and so forth. So without being able to export it that way and being stuck in stereo, right or left, or sometimes even worse mono, sometimes better mono. But anyways, with the limitations of left and right, it's a little more difficult to ask your speaker to do exactly what I'm actually after. But now I've found a way to do it as 5.1. So I'm hoping that pretty soon I'm going to release those versions of the tracks, like with a slight remastering, and be able to show what's really going on in my head when I'm listening to that.
Well, let's clarify that, my friend. I mean, only a small sliver until they get the day of virtual reality. Then we can open up the window a bit more.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, dude, like I say, before we do wrap this up, man, there's a couple of things I wanted to ask you about, and anyone who's been following your sort of feed on social media will I'm sure I'll be begging the same question. How are you finding the trumpet?
It's super difficult. Super difficult. I love it. I've always wanted to play the trumpet, and not long into having it, I had this massive problem with my teeth because of years of just dental hygiene neglect, I suppose. But anyways, I had to get a tooth pulled got that trumpet. And so like to do the embouchures and stuff with that kind of like ridiculous pain was really testing. But I did pick it up at the thrift store and I could make a note, and then I took it home and then I fixed the trumpet and now I can make more notes. It's going to be a long process. I mean, like it's right now, all I can really do with it is some really trippy drone stuff, which honestly was a part of why I wanted it. But yeah, it's its own beast. I've never played any brass instrument, and I'm just not used to that embouchure at all. I mean, I do didgeridoo and beatbox, but that's a whole different slack mouth than this tight lip maneuver that you have to do with this. So I don't know. It's gonna be a slow go. Slow go.
And the other one I was going to mention, I mean, I think it's going to be, I think I know exactly what the answer is going to come back from this, but it's something been a kind of theme what you've been talking about tonight in previous conversations. Obviously, you put it this way, you mentioned earlier on when you said, you know, when you had it at one point where you wake out of sleep, put your guitar on, and make a, you know, the piece of music. So my question to you really, do you write any of this down? And if you don't, I mean, how do you go back and, I mean, is it just literally all in your head so you can go and recreate a piece of music later on? Or do you just leave it and think, oh, okay, I'll go back at some point and just think, how did I do that? And try to relearn it. I mean, how does that process work?
I've got a really good memory. I don't have so much music theory knowledge to pull off of, so I have to trust my memory more. So like I don't know, like it's very rare that I forget people's names, and definitely even more rare that I forget someone's face. But as long as there's a story attached to that, like I always remember, you know. So like when I was in school, I used to be able to like remember reading the book, for instance. Like if I was asked a question, then I could like put myself back a few days ago looking at a book and then reread it. So I don't know. I've always had that, especially musically. Like if I've seen someone or perform, like right after, if I grab an instrument, I can use their lick, right? And then kind of have that moment of, huh, that's weird. I wasn't even thinking you were listening. It's like, yeah, I thought you were going to go this way with it or whatever. But easier to maybe show you is just like I wrote this quote unquote right? This piece Saturday before my girlfriend went to go play a Tom Waits night. And so I'll try and play it for you. Just take me 1 second to like make sure this camera thing, and then we'll just do a thumbs up to make sure you can actually hear this. You got sound? Okay. that piece.
Perfect, man. Well, I'll tell you what. I was going to end. And we can do it as well. We can end on the art room as well, man. But that was a perfect piece. I have to ask you a question. Have you got a title for that track yet, or not?
Not yet. I don't. Yeah, I'm not completely certain what to call that. So, I'm sure I'll dream up something. It deserves a name. It deserves a name.
Man, I think the lessons we learned from that is don't search for it. It'll come, my friend. It'll come. And that's always the best ways, because sometimes if you search for a title or a track, it ends up sounding really, really cheesy and corny. So I'll just let it come, man. That's the flow. You know that trick. I'm not trying.
Sounds good.
Cool. Well, look, man. Go on.
We'll call it that. It'll come. You know. It'll be like a slightly weird, sexually suggestive title, you know, to something that doesn't merit it. But
yeah. Exactly, man. Well, look, dude, it's been absolutely, well, dude, as always, an insightful conversation. Like I said, man, I'm gonna finish with, art room experiments, man. And like I said, we gave a bit of an intro to what it was all about at the beginning of this conversation. But while I am wrapping that up, man, just let people know where they can, at the moment, reach out and find you. And well, as always, man, and I was going to say this to you on public, I look forward to seeing you on N99, dude, because it's you've been one of the inspirations behind it, man. There's been many lines of inspiration and code and stuff has been written to your music, man. So I look forward to seeing you on the other side, as they say. But like I say, as I cue this up, man, just give me your thoughts about it, and just tell me, let people know where they can reach out and where they can find you, man, while I'm queuing this up. And as ever, man, thank you very much for coming on and giving me your time.
Thanks for having me, man. It's always a good time talking. I am on the Oppressor. YouTube channel is probably the best way to see the new content, and there's ways to get a hold of me through there, or Facebook, Kill the Oppressor. And for whatever reason, minds.com is not working on my phone anymore. So I have that, but I have no way to access anything on it anymore. So anyways, soon to be N99 though, and if no one stole my nomenclature there, it'll be Kill the Oppressor at N99. But yeah, you're just gonna play me out, eh? Play. Yeah, there you go.